Just want you to know that we finally finished this about 3 a.m. this morning. So if something is wrong there, don't worry. I went back to sleep. First question, is Joel Marciano here? Hello, Joel. I guess not. Okay. For quite a few years now, we, a group of us, established a foundation called PhilDev to work with the Philippine government to start the process of understanding and implementing solutions for economic growth in the country. PhilDev takes the view that economic growth is a necessity, if not sufficient condition for broader and inclusive development, enlarging the ability of individuals to be productive and creative. While growth is not an end by itself, it makes it possible to achieve other important objectives of individuals and societies. It can spare an entire population from poverty and drudgery. Nothing else has. It also creates resources to support education, healthcare, infrastructure building, and overall quality of life. In recent years, we have seen the emergence of interest in innovation and entrepreneurship in developing countries, including the Philippines. Presidents and leaders of industry use it as a call for action, as if everyone knows and why it works and why does it matter. It is assumed that the role of innovation and entrepreneurship is to enable rapid and sustainable economic growth in the country. Clearly, the problem of economic development is difficult to solve. Research has shown that in any economy, sustained high growth happens due to a number of common attributes, such as a functioning market system, high levels of saving by the population, public and private sector investment, resource mobility, innovation in science and technology, and political leadership and their ability to deploy the right infrastructure and business policies. Additionally, the infrastructure for innovation in science and technology assumes an educational system in primary and secondary levels that promote a STEM culture, and at college and university levels a globally competitive practice of research and development focused on society's needs. Once growth is achieved, sustaining it over such a long period requires a strong leadership in government. Successful cases of leadership in government share a further characteristic, and that is an increasingly capable, credible, and effective government. It requires a strong commitment pursued with patience, perseverance, and pragmatism. However, government is not only the cause of growth. That role falls to the private sector and their ability to innovate and invest, and entrepreneurs responding to market needs. But in the long run, it is the resources of the global economy that stand out as the driving force, sustaining high growth in a developing economy, and these come in three parts: global market demand, technology-based innovation, and entrepreneurship and foreign direct investments. In the case of global market demand, it is important to note that in a poor developing country, the size of the global economy is huge in comparison, and at the right cost and prices, the global market demand is unlimited. It is not only possible now, but more importantly, easier to enter the global market because the world economy is open and integrated. Based on research, It is accepted that once the challenge of identifying industries in which the country can invest in acquiring a comparative advantage is met, growth in exports will not be constrained by demand, and growth in the economy can occur at the rate determined by savings and investments. We need to be aware, however, that in a country like the Philippines has a high percentage of poor people, savings alone does not promote inclusive development. This is because invested savings come from those that have the financial resources, the rich, resulting in the rich getting richer, and the poor are still poor. The only known solution to this is innovation and entrepreneurship, where knowledge in innovation is valued in most cases more than just plain money, and the practice of entrepreneurship through fair equity distribution between entrepreneurs, investors, and employees. These investments in the early stages will go into the export sector, which can grow at rates high enough to pull the economy along. The growth of exports can set in motion a process of sustained growth which is transmitted to the whole economy and could not be achieved by relying on domestic demand alone. However, mature global markets rely on proven and reliable practices that define property rights, enforce contracts, fair prices, and informational transparency between buyers and sellers. These policy foundations of sustained high growth create an environment for high levels of investment, job creation, competition, resource mobility, social protections, equity, and inclusiveness. The second resource for high growth is innovation and entrepreneurship based on technology. It is very important and necessary that the value of technology innovation is translated to equity and fair ownership in the enterprise building. Local economies that cannot compete globally on technology innovation have slow growth and stay at the developing status. The third reason for high growth is foreign direct investments, or investments beyond the capacity of the local economy to save. It is especially important in that it brings in more technology, market knowledge, and access to global markets. In short, FDIs are the conduit for growing economies to import ideas, technologies, and market know-how. Foreign education is not necessarily a resource, but is valuable on its own in the sense that it often creates lasting international networks. Since learning is faster than inventing, fast learners can rapidly gain ground on leading economies. These proven principles for economic growth are the foundation of PhilDev, our foundation, as I mentioned. Eradication of poverty through sustainable high economic growth based on inclusive innovation. I have some comments later. Within the last years in the US and other countries, there has been a movement in transforming engineering education beyond theoretical skills to include experiential design. It is no longer enough to provide our future engineering leaders with technical skills. They must also learn to work on the local economy. To learn to work in multidisciplinary teams, how to iterate designs rapidly, how to manufacture sustainably, and how to address global market needs. Students must be able to solve problems characterized by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. They need new toolkits that allow them to frame and then reframe the problem they are trying to solve. Infusing design culture in faculty and students will reinvent existing programs that are overly focused on analysis and design. To correct shortcomings in the skills needed to operate in the concrete realm of making things and to offer students experiential learning alongside theory. The design process itself induces critical thinking, which is the most important asset in designing successful products. Industry benefits tremendously through productivity and efficiency in the design process, even for new college graduates. The design process iterates between analysis and synthesis work, and between working in the concrete world and in the abstract world. It starts in the concrete world with observation or immersing oneself in the context of the problem to be solved, and learning from both quantitative and qualitative data about the situation. It then moves into the abstract space to extract insights from the messy data of the observation phase. And this is interesting because it's only in the last 10 years where data science emerges. Otherwise, the data gets messy, and if you are in AI, it's probably hard to converge. The same data that I just mentioned here, exposing questions such as what is important, what is new, the insights and imperatives identified are then carried into the areas phase of the how side of the model, where teams learn how to separate the act of diverting from that of converting and how to imagine a variety of alternate ideas. Finally, the model returns to the concrete space with actual prototyping of solutions and experimentation to get feedback and learn more insights into the proposed solution before exploring alternatives. The model is, as described, divergence to convergence, or iteration of alternative ideas, is far from linear. The prototyping itself is linear and is considered a short loop, but the iterative process as a whole is a long loop. Within the long loop, teams must pay attention to where they are in the cycle, to step back from solutions and ask what problem they are solving to ensure connection to objectives, and to be willing to put something unfinished in front of others to learn. It goes without saying that design and innovation is not undertaken by individuals working on their own. Product development in industry is always undertaken by cross-functional team representing research and development, product marketing, minor participation from operations and sales, and sometimes management. In Silicon Valley, for example, during the design process, inserted in the schedule are what we call milestone design reviews, where the team invites top designers and engineers in specific technical experts within the company to critique specific approaches to the design. The design itself and the resulting viability and efficiency of the design are fed back to the design process. In looking at the big picture of innovation, good design practice is a necessity in the same way that innovation is a necessity for entrepreneurship. Clearly, there is a need for discussion among stakeholders from academia, industry, government, private organizations, and experts. All of us thinking about the need for innovation and entrepreneurship as the foundation of our country's economic development. Innovation creates the path to what is new and necessary to become better integrated into a world of accelerated changes, complex, competitive, open, and globalized. Strategic planning for innovation must therefore consider the trends evolving from throughout the world, because sooner or later these tend to impose themselves everywhere as true disruptions. With these goals of innovation and entrepreneurship, those are the two most impactful tools for economic development. Only then will we be able to share in the true value and benefits of those two words. And not to forget, this is all based on the foundation of scientists and engineers innovating and taking risks as entrepreneurs. To summarize these roles, 1, government creates the right infrastructures and business policies. Academia produces manpower expertise through engineering education and research institutes creating technologies. And 3rd, industry taking the risk and provides the necessary investments to innovate and create products. When successful, extremely high revenues and corporate value is achieved, contributing to high levels of investments and employment. This closed-loop system promotes sustainable high economic growth, which is the only known solution to eradicate poverty. Conclusively, enrichment of the poor did not come from charity, and instead from progressive, thriving economy. The betterment of the next generation will be enabled not by politicians, but from engineers and entrepreneurs rich in ideas for innovation and businessmen who understand the dynamics of wealth accumulation. Let me now delve into what we usually call inclusive innovation. And the reason I was asking if Joel is here is because I've been working with him. He's Filipino, of course, professor, PhD, and so on. In fact, we funded his fellowship at the University of Berkeley years ago. But during those years where we were really close, he was always observing what I was talking about. One of them is inclusiveness. And I